Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good. I'm excited to be here to speak with all of you. This is one of my favorite conferences of the year, without question, because it's one of the few conferences where we focus on best practices and new technologies for being more progressive in the way that we're selling. And if there's anything that we need right now, it's better solutions to solve the more modern problems that we're all facing. We face buyers that are more educated than they've ever been. They will not suffer fools wisely, and if we don't have the right kinds of tools, technologies, the right advice to provide them, we're going to have a really tough time with things. And Gerhardt and his team does a great job of assembling all kinds of ideas, and we brought them in to do performance mindset training at our company and had a great time with it. I've spent more than 25 years in sales and marketing service myself. I'm currently with ClearSlide, but before that, I was at DocuSign and helped to build that business, was at Microsoft running the unified communications business there for about 4 years. Before that, did a number of startups in the Valley, and earlier in my career was at Procter & Gamble and at McKinsey, and focused exclusively in sales and marketing issues. I love this area. I love the profession of selling. I love what we do in this area. And so what I'm here to talk to you about is some research that we've done at our company. We spent a lot of time trying to understand what's happening in the marketplace, to tune up the kinds of equipment, tools that we're bringing to all of you, and I'm going to share some of that today. And some of that research is revealing some insights that are really relevant to this topic of high performance, because as leaders, how many of us are leading sales teams here? How many of you guys have sales groups as opposed to individual contributors? We have to be the high performance leaders that help our staff to achieve higher performance levels, and it begins with us equipping ourselves to make that happen. And so I'm going to talk about some of the trends that affect us and the things we can do to help our teams be more effective in general. This is the sentiment that I mostly see, and at our company we have over 5,000 organizations that use our technology. We've got over 100,000 subscribers that are using ClearSlide. We spend a lot of time talking with sales leaders, and there's a sense of growing challenge and frustration about driving for performance, because it is a very challenging environment that we're facing. And it's no longer just about hitting great revenue goals at any cost, particularly in the Valley, where I spend a lot of my time as well, and where a lot of technology companies are getting funded. Over the last 5 years, we've had dramatic access to capital. It has been so cheap. We've been able to basically throw dollars at all of our issues and problems. We've been able to hire huge teams. I had some board members who once said to me, the way we're solving these problems just isn't efficient anymore. We're using kind of the Chinese army method of just throwing people at our issues. And it's not going to be sustainable. And you guys have probably seen in just the last 6 months a dramatic turnaround. If you've invested in tech stocks, particularly SaaS companies, they're off almost 50% over 6 months' time, because it's not an efficient way to run our businesses. And if you look at the surveys that we've done with CSO Insights and Accenture and others, these are the top concerns that we're hearing from sales leaders when we're out meeting with them. Not just new revenue growth anymore. No, the second most important thing is overall sales productivity, because we can't afford to just keep hiring people and churning them out, and we've got the highest levels of churns, the lowest levels of attainment that we've had in kind of a recorded history. And it's a problem, and it's a wake-up call, should be a wake-up call for every one of us in leadership. We've got to do a better job here. The other areas, forecast accuracy, customer satisfaction, faster deal cycles, of course these are all still important. But this area of overall sales productivity is where we've seen the biggest year-over-year increase, that leaders have to take on more general management responsibility for not just driving results, but driving results efficiently. And that's high performance in leadership terms. In fact, it's gotten so bad, occasionally I get invited in to sit with sales leaders and hear some of the meetings and interactions. So I've got a quick video clip of a recent interaction that I had where a sales leader was meeting with their CFO and some of the leadership team. And so I'd like to actually play that video clip in this next slide.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled. You want answers?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth. Son, we live in a world that requires revenue, and that revenue must be brought in by people with elite skills. Who's going to find it? You, Mr. Finance? You, Mr. Operations? We have a greater responsibility than you could possibly fathom. You scoff at the sales division. You curse our lucrative incentives. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what we know. That while the cost of business results may seem excessive, it drives in revenue. And my very existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, drives revenue. You don't want to know the truth. Because deep down in places that you don't talk about are team and management meetings. You want me on that call. You need me on that call. We use words like fleet view, volume control, total cost of ownership. We use these words as a backbone of a life spent negotiating something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor inclination to explain myself to people who rise and sleep under the very blanket of revenue that I provide and then question the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just say thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, may I suggest you pick up a phone and make some sales calls. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. Did you...
That's the tenor of some discussions that are happening between CFOs and sales leaders today. I mean, it's really tough. But it's humorous, and we bring it up for this very reason. It's a time in the cycle of selling right where we've just got to make sure we're being more effective and efficient. And there's a ton of modern tools that are available to us. In fact, there's so many tools out there that it can be somewhat overwhelming. And so I want to talk to you about how to think about evaluating some of those tools, what you should be looking for, how to build more of a platform of capabilities that will help to interoperate so that your teams are really effective. You know, if you look at the tools that are available, it truly is overwhelming. I mean, across CRM, demand gen, ad tech, you know, e-commerce, market analytics, there's just a slew of great opportunities. The result of us funding all kinds of new tech companies in the Valley that offer all kinds of promise and everything else. But be very careful when you evaluate a lot of these companies. I would argue, and I've talked with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley in just the last few months, that probably about half of these recently funded SaaS companies are going to go away over the next 18 months because they're not going to get the next round of funding. So be very careful in the vendors that you select because we have overfunded the number of tools. And the challenge that we face as sales leaders is pulling together the tools that will interoperate together to help you be more effective and productive across your organizations. And that's where I get asked a lot of questions. Well, which tool should I pick? You know, what should we be trying to assemble with our ops teams as a sales leadership group or as a sales manager? What should we be focusing on? And what I always say is, look, focus on what's really going to make the biggest difference, which is the quality of the interactions that your sales reps and your CX organization, your support teams, your marketers are having with your customers. Because across the way you prospect, the way that you engage to do opportunity management, and the way that you're driving customer success through a support organization, there's an interaction gap that your CRM system doesn't handle. It has the data, it has a lot of the information that exists about your accounts, but the quality of your interactions is something as managers and leaders that you've got to ensure is super high. But there's software that can help bridge the interaction gap that is left by CRM systems that weren't purpose-built for this. Even Salesforce, which I love, we're a gold partner of Salesforce, it was not originally built with communications in mind, so it doesn't have a lot of communications capabilities. It's a great internal system. It's got all your great data that sits in there, but it does not make the communications very easy. They're trying to add some things to it, like some calling capabilities and things like that, but it's very challenging, so we've got to help bridge that gap. How many use web conferencing in this organization? Have your teams do web conferencing? Great. Vast majority of us do. And 76% of sales leaders say, you know, web meetings improve the quality of customer interactions, even if you're in a field selling role. Obviously, it allows you to interact more quickly. It's convenient. People can multitask. You can get information across. But unfortunately, 90% of folks that use these tools report that sales content, when they're in the middle of a meeting, is too difficult to find, and it limits the quality of those interactions. So you should use a web conferencing solution that has persistent content that allows you to gain access to whatever case studies, testimonials, videos, slides that you might want to utilize without having to restart it or find things that are going on, or without having to force people to download clients or information. And there are web-based solutions these days that make it much, much easier to make that happen. And yet, the vast majority of sales teams aren't using those more modern types of technologies. Here's another challenge. Your field reps and even a lot of the inside reps that are now going into the field oftentimes don't have access to the most important materials they're going to use on their mobile devices, on their iPads, on their tablets, and they should. They should persistently be available, and it should be updated automatically. And there are solutions out there that make that possible now, but most of us aren't using them in our teams. And it's a shame because our reps then go into conversations not equipped with the most modern tools that they can be using to drive success in those conversations. The result of which is that 60% of sales leaders say, look, the lack of proper tools is leading to longer, lengthened sales cycles, and when you put them in place, it accelerates it dramatically, drives improvement in productivity, and greater performance results. Now, as I mentioned, the engagements that I see that are most effective are when you bridge that interaction gap, where you've got higher quality prospect and customer insight that comes from using better tools, better information, more higher quality presentations. And what you should look for are either vendors or start building yourself a more integrated platform for how you're actually engaging with your customers. And there are a number of companies that are introducing these kinds of platforms now that integrate the way you use content between marketing and sales and support so that the most important material is available to everybody, that the communications that you're using can be done across all channels, email, on the web, phone, in person, and that information gets logged back. And the predictive analytics, as you heard about, come out of that. Insights and alerts when people have picked up your material, so you know when to follow up. You can see what slides did they look at, what did they skip, what materials have great open rates, what don't. And partner apps that help you to dig even deeper, all of which should integrate with your CRM system. That's the world of the platforms that we are definitely moving toward, and you're going to see massive consolidation of vendors over the next couple of years, pulling these things into more integrated platforms. And it's happening already very, very quickly. And as you're thinking about your own strategies with your ops teams and the way that you're equipping your group, this is what you should be thinking about, is how to pull it together. Because these integrated insights, I mean, the truth of the matter is when we introduced cloud services back in the early 2000s, I was involved with some of the first web conferencing companies, WebEx, Placewares. We got bought up by Microsoft and Cisco and other companies, pulled into unified communication suites. But back then, I'll tell you what our goal was. It was to take the software that we knew we could run on premise and put it up in the cloud and convince all of you and your security officers and CIOs that it was safe to actually interact outside your firewalls with this kind of information. What we didn't think about was the value of content and analytics coming from those interactions. Don't ever send an attachment over email anymore. Send a link, because when a link is sent to content information, you know when people hit it, you know what they viewed, you can get alerts about that. We didn't think about that originally, but that's the new medium around which we should all be selling so that we know when to engage when people are in a consideration mindset. Because if you call somebody after they've just recently clicked on your content material, you got an alert about it, and you follow up 15, 20, 30 minutes later with a phone call, they say, this is great. I was just reviewing your content. This is very helpful. It's a different conversation that you can have. It's funny, the cloud, and I don't know how many folks are in technology, but cloud services have changed the world. My analogy for this is the first phase of the cloud was kind of like the first phase of television. Anybody watch or seen old television, the first 5, 10 years of television? You know what it looked like? It looked a lot like a radio announcer standing in front of a camera. It took a long time for them to figure out, wait a second, TV's a different medium than radio. It came from radio. But then, like, wait, it took a while to figure out they could put sets, they could go on site. For a while, they were just filming radio announcers. The cloud is much the same way. Initially, we're just putting software up there to make available. What we didn't think about were just the value of these deep insights, the immediate access that you've got to know when people are connecting, and all this big data analytics that comes from it. And it's powerful stuff if you'll work with vendors who package it up into really actionable insights, not into things you have to data mine, but things that give you alerts, insights, analytics, and help you to accelerate how fast you're doing your interactions. So I'm going to give you 4 quick what I call tips about how to leverage these modern tools that you should look for. I'm going to talk through some stats that we've got through research around this, and then I'm going to give you just a couple best practices in these areas. Here are the 4 tips. Pick tools that help you to prioritize deals that will save everyone's time, your customers, your employees, your reps, your managers, that improve your data and insights. If your tools don't do that, you're investing in old school technology. Not Web 2.0 or 3.0, you're investing in Web 1.0 technology. And don't do it, it's a waste of money and effort, it's outdated. And the 4th thing is use these tools to help accelerate your onboarding and how perfectly your reps are pitching. There's no excuse for poor pitches, and we'll talk about that. All right, so the first one, tools can help prioritize your deals. Here's the first big tip. Disqualifying deals in your pipeline, opportunities, is nearly as important as qualifying them. And I'll explain why this is true. And it's super important to understand this. Time is money. We have such a limited amount of time. We're overwhelmed with opportunities. And here's the deal. 48% of forecasted deals in a quarter slip out of that quarter. Sorry, 58%. Over half of the deals that you have in your forecast, on average, through research we've done with CSO Insights, slips out of the quarter, right? Does this sound familiar to you guys? There's a lot of stuff that's in there that doesn't quite close, right? The reason for that is 70% of reps aren't fully validating early on the interest that they've got in the sales cycle. So they've got happy ears. They think they're more engaged than they are. You don't know it as a manager or as a leader in the organization, and so you get misreported information coming from the reps and the managers that are involved. And unfortunately, we tend to forecast a lot of deals are going to close that don't. In fact, most of the deals we forecast are going to close don't. It's a real problem. And if you look at the full pipeline, even beyond the quarter, 75% of the deals in most sales teams' pipelines never close. It's just a bunch of junk. Now think about that. Quarter of the deals that are in your pipeline are the ones that are going to actually make you money. 75% are never going to buy from you. And if you can figure out that quarter earlier on and focus your time and attention on building those into bigger deals and disqualify that other 75% of your time, you and your teams will be far more effective, far more efficient. So how do we help with this? Well, best practice that as leaders and managers we can bring to this is that we can use analytics tools that will actually show rep by rep, deal by deal, what is the level of engagement? How many emails have been sent? Have they been opened? Have they been forwarded? What kinds of conversations have happened? Have there been phone calls, web conferences? If you're seeing a deal that's being predicted as one that's going to close and it's unfortunately has very little interaction around it, that's a red alert. And there are reps who will send out tons of emails with very poor open rates, and you should be able to see that, and that will change the way you coach and interact with those reps. And if you're using more modern tools, you're going to have this kind of interaction data that exposes the holes in what you're getting out of your self-reported information from your reps and managers. And you can go deal by deal and see even where the high probability closed deals are adding up and where the engagement data that you're seeing against that deal doesn't align with that. Where reps saying, yeah, this thing's definitely going to close, it's looking good, but they haven't talked in 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. There's no interaction, information's not being passed around. On the flip side, you can also find opportunities that are moving very quickly because there's a ton of interaction and the reps aren't forecasting it. The bluebirds you can pull out of the bush, you can help identify those here, and the sooner and more regularly you're doing this, the better you can groom those pipelines. And if you're not doing this kind of work, this is what I mean by actionable insights and more predictive analytics that actually affect the way that we coach and the way that we work. And this isn't about data scientists working on things. This is about you as managers and reps having tools that spotlight and highlight this already with engagement data trends that will help you to bump against what's being reported about by your own reps to really test the validity of that. All right, let's talk about a second one. Saving tools, or tools that save everyone's time and energy. This is also very important. Here's the problem. With content in general, we are wasting a tremendous amount of time because often reps don't know what the best content is. There's a debate happening continually between marketing and sales around why content isn't having more effective impact in the interactions that are occurring. And you should be using tools and systems that give you a single source of the truth of what's happening with the content in your organization. Our reps, on average again, this is through Aberdeen, are spending 440 hours a year searching for content. That's a tremendous amount of time that they could be interacting with your customers rather than working internally to find the materials that they need for those interactions. 65% of our sales reps' time is actually being wasted in non-selling activities. 55% of all the collateral that's actually presented to customers is actually produced by your reps, not by your marketing teams. How can that happen? In an era where we've invested so aggressively in content, we've got these powerful tools and marketing groups and closer interactions and CRM systems that are supposed to bring it all together. It's because we're not using integrated content that makes it easy or content that's integrated with communications to actually give us a good view of what's happening. The result of which is most sales leaders and managers report that they don't feel their organizations effectively manage their sales content, that there's a real disconnect that's occurring in these areas. And so here's some best practices about what to do with that. Number one, content libraries shouldn't just be static, or they shouldn't be sitting in just Salesforce's things that reps can voluntarily download. If you use integrated content and communications tools, these libraries should show not just you as managers, but reps as well, what is the content that's being utilized. Every day, on a summary basis, every week, every month, what's the most popular content? What are reps? And by the way, what are your top performing reps using for content? What are the emails they're sending out? What are the pitch decks they're using? What are the case studies that are working? What are the video testimonials? This should be patently obvious to every rep in your organization and to you as leaders and managers. And if you use an integrated framework or, again, a platform that includes content management and communications, you will see this. And everyone else can see it, and there will be debate about what content works and what's useful will end, and reps will stop wasting their time building content because they'll be able to leverage the content that's already there. And so anyway, content libraries that show you where things work. Second thing, this stuff should be available on your mobile device. Don't buy from vendors who don't have mobile versions of their solutions. If it only works on your desktop or laptop, that's not a good answer. You know, there are way more mobile devices now. For the last 5 years, we've produced more mobile devices than we have PCs or Mac devices. And everybody is going to be presenting, or should be using, tablets and iPads to make sure that, in fact, they're being really efficient in the way that they're running their meetings. So mobile access to content is super important. And when you sync that content back in those meetings, the content should be kept up to date. So if you're working with vendors that don't give you Android, an iPhone, and even Microsoft-type platform solutions for your mobile devices, you're probably not making your best choice. So think about that as well. Third area. These tools should definitely improve your data and insights as you're going along, not just for you as leaders and managers, but for your reps as well. How is that going to be possible and transparent? All these tools should be built so they auto-sync with your CRM system. Your reps shouldn't have to log a bunch of information. They hate to log information. It's a waste of time, and it requires you to rely on their self-reporting skills in this area. If you use an integrated engagement platform that takes content and communications, those same platforms will go ahead and auto-log who did the meeting happen, who was involved, what materials were presented, how many slides did you get through. All that stuff should just automatically get uploaded. When you're sending an email, you ought to be able to pull that information directly out of the CRM system for any of your campaigns or outreach, and it ought to be auto-synced and logged. The reality is 52% of CFOs don't believe in the reliability of the CRM activity data that exists. That sounds terrible, which is why we're having tough conversations with them. But what's even worse is 94% of sales leaders also lack confidence in the activity data that lives in their CRM systems. That's a scathing indictment of the way we're using our own technology, that if we don't believe, and many of us don't because it is self-reported, that the information's reliable that's in there. And yet, teams that do focus on improving sales engagement and using these kinds of platforms have dramatically better win rates and better results all up. So this isn't rocket science. So the best practice here, make sure that the apps you're choosing interoperate with your CRM system. Whether it's Salesforce or Dynamics, the connectors to build between these are so simple. The APIs are readily available. We built at ClearSlide APIs for Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics before we even joined their partner systems, because it's just a basic part of how you would build a system. So if you're working with vendors or folks that aren't giving you connectors, again, that's a red flag. And on average, by the way, most sales organizations that are progressive are using at least 8 apps that are part of a Salesforce or Dynamics ecosystem to make sure they're boosting productivity. And again, a lot of these things are consolidating, so it should be easier. These apps should automatically auto-sync so that things are always kept in line, and that's like an assistant to your sales assistant to make sure that you get better information that's coming through the systems. The last area is all about onboarding and pitching more perfectly. This is an area I get continually frustrated with, which is I can't stand to see reps or leaders or managers who aren't doing a good job of putting our solutions out there. You know, the best example, most painful one I saw this year was this story here. Anybody catch this? I'm out in the Bay Area. We have the Golden State Warriors. We love basketball out there. It's been a very good year for Steph Curry in particular. Any basketball fans here? I don't know if anybody noticed, but Steph was working with Nike. But unfortunately, he is no longer. Nike lost Steph. Why did that happen? Because Nike did a very bad pitch to Steph and his family about signing him up for a renewal. In fact, they were doing a web conference, they had some PowerPoint slides. Unfortunately, those slides, they mispronounced his name, they called him Steven. Then they actually used a bunch of slides that had Kevin Durant's name in it, and it was unfortunately, obviously a form. And it so offended him, Steph and his family, that they said, forget it, we're going to go to Under Armour, and they canceled their contract. So here's the best practice tip in this area. Create a library of recordings and videos. And if you're using integrated communications tools, it's just as simple as flipping a switch to make sure that you're actually having your reps record their interactions, take the best of those, and make them available to everybody. Folks like LinkedIn do this automatically. They've got wonderful perfect pitch libraries. We face 20% average turnover of our sales reps every year. And it's not good. It should be lower than that, but that's what we're running at currently. 71% of companies take more than 6 months to onboard and ramp their reps. That's too long. And only 20% of sales leaders' time is actually spent directly helping reps sell, so they've got to learn more from each other. And the good news is that the millennial sellers that we're bringing on board are good at doing that, as long as you can give them videos to watch of each other. As long as there's web conferences and recordings that are available, they'll love to spend time doing that. In fact, they prefer to spend time doing that rather than having one-on-one coaching sessions. But if you don't capture, record, make those libraries available, it won't happen. So create these videos, record your pitches for coaching, and then give real-time feeds about what are reps doing, so you can have insights and other reps can see how are the interactions occurring, and click on links to see what content or materials or pitches are actually occurring afterwards, so that this isn't just some farce or some lore about presentations. If your team sees the kinds of interactions that are occurring all the time, and you've got a stream of information that's coming on what's actually happening with meetings, that helps out dramatically. All right, so to summarize, disqualify leads, make sure you've got a single source of content, auto-sync with your CRM system, create these best practice libraries, and you're going to see all kinds of improvements in productivity. Any quick questions as I step away here? Go ahead.
Dustin, I live in a world between Jennifer's conversation about spending less time with customers and harassing them less.
Yes.
And your world of let's use tools to get to them. In fact, we use the Oracle Marketing Cloud to figure the Oracle.
Sure.
To identify what customers are doing, and the marketing people say, we want the salespeople to use the Marketing Cloud to send email messages, template formats, et cetera, so that we can track them.
You bet. So yeah, let me address it. It's really interesting. I love marketing automation. We use Marketo. I used Eloqua at DocuSign. I love marketing automation. But to your point, it's generic. When we built these marketing automation frameworks and tools, it's sort of a nurturing flow that we built for the idealized customer. And to your point, it doesn't always work. What we try to get companies to do is to take the same campaigns, maybe you'll have 10 or 12 different nurturing emails that have been built, or sets of content that the marketing team is going to put out, and say to the teams that are building this, listen, put the same content in the hands of the reps, but allow them to use the discussions they've had to select what's going to go next. Don't just rely on the automated nurturing program. Use the actual discussion dialogue. If you just had a meeting and there was a bunch of security concerns that were raised, great, grab that security information and send that out next. Don't wait for it to come up in the queue, and put intelligent interactions behind that and repurpose the content. But to your point, I think we've gotten too far down the path of just relying on nurturing as a form of trying to qualify without applying sales logic, and we should be bringing these two worlds together and repurposing a lot of that same marketing content, putting it in the hands of the rep, allowing them to make the best choices about what's going to happen next. Does that make sense? Awesome. Great. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, this is really a question, but we recently adopted ClearSlide, and as a sales manager, I think it's great for peace of mind for your salespeople when you send out an email pitch to see the open rate and to be able to follow up on that. Did they open it? Have they looked at it? What have they looked at? Especially if you're sending, you don't have to send attachments, you can just send a link. You can track whether they've opened the link, what they're looking
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We do have a booth here. And to your point, look, the reason this stuff is so great is, again, when we built WebEx and Placeware and all kinds of other kinds of original solutions, we had to have separate clients to manage those interactions. We have such powerful browsers now. What Google has done, what Microsoft has done, what Apple has done is created browsers that are so powerful, we don't have to have special apps. The fact we're still using WebEx and forcing people to download clients to have meetings from Citrix, GoToMeeting, or other places is archaic. The technology does not require that. And so we have a browser-based approach, and you can track, and to your point, it's just a more modern, I mean, I look at the tool set and I think, my God, this is what we sort of dreamed of originally. But getting sales folks, sometimes who do not embrace new technologies, to understand there's a smarter, more professional way to manage things, it can be painful. So thank you for the endorsement and for using the solution. Thank you as well for letting me share some of the insights on what's happening in our industry. And if you do have questions, please feel free to look me up or the team after we're finished. Thank you so much, Gerhard and team. Cheers.